Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we'll be ranking all the different Leman Russ tanks from the Tiow mod in ArmA 3. Now this list is all my opinions, but I will be making points and arguments for each placement on the list, so let's get into it. We will be doing this in the most low effort way possible, using Tier Maker. Here are all the different patterns we will be looking at today, in order of appearance. The Vanquisher, Punisher, Exterminator, Executioner, Demolisher, Conqueror, normal Battlecannon², and Annihilator. Now, starting off strong, we have the Vanquisher. Yep, this one goes straight to S tier, no questions asked. This vehicle will absolutely brutalize any other tank on the field up to a Blade. Its high explosive shells are neither particularly potent nor numerous, but it comes with arguably the best multi-purpose Sponson armament in the form of plasma cannons for some much needed anti-infantry firepower and medium armor killing capability. Rounding off the package is a heavy hull-mounted bolter, which is an excellent weapon all around and can deal with light to heavy infantry and even light vehicles. So overall, a very multi-purpose vehicle. Moving on to the Punisher. Now, this might be surprising to some people, but this one goes into the C tier. Some of you might say, now hang on, this is the apex infantry predator, and you would be entirely correct. However, that's all it does. Yep. It's got a monstrous rotary cannon with a generous ammunition supply as its main armament, but this is exactly the problem. This cannon only fires solid projectiles, which, have decent anti-armor capability against light vehicles, sentinels and such, space marines as well. But other than that, they don't do very much. They don't explode, so using this against aircraft is not an option. The cannon also has a quite pronounced spread past about 500 meters, which means hitting something even the size of a space marine is very ammo intensive. And the only reason why this thing is not any lower down is because, well, it has heavy bolter sponsons, and interestingly, a flamer, a hull-mounted heavy flamer, which only the Conqueror shares. More on that one later. So, going from that to the Exterminator. The Exterminator comes in at a high A tier, just barely missing S tier. Where to even begin with this monster? For start, it has a twin-linked autocannon, which does not, in fact, fire two shells at the same time, but it fires at a faster rate than the standard autocannon. I'm not sure if it's twice the rate, but it's definitely relatively fast. You also do not get an ammunition choice with this one. Instead, it fires a round which has high explosive, it has splash damage, it's an okay, good splash damage, and it pierces armor about as well as an APCR round does. Basically a omni-purpose round. This means that it can engage infantry perfectly well, it can kill very good at killing space marines, up to light and medium vehicles, chimeras, and it disables. It can disable tanks when you give it a few shots. It also has 22 degrees of elevation, which means you can basically use this as a Hydra proxy if you're really getting harassed by some aircraft. And last for the Exterminator is the hull-mounted las cannon, which is a very powerful anti-tank weapon with an okay reload, but you have infinite rounds, so this adds some very good long-range anti-tank capability. Next up, we have the Executioner. This one is a doozy, because as some of you might have noticed, this actually has two entries on the list. Because, in my opinion, this tank specifically, we cannot judge this based on the usual conditions of a tank in a field doing tank stuff. So, if we were to take this tank alone and evaluate its performance, alone on the field, this would be C tier. This would go straight down to C tier, just in front of the Punisher, because unlike the Punisher, it actually has versatility. But if you supply this thing properly with ammunition, if you have, say, a Trojan with you at all times, and I mean at all times, this is double S tier. This is easily the best Leman Russ variant in the entire game. Its plasma cannon is absolutely ridiculous. It disables tanks one shot. It kills anything lighter than that without even a second thought. It dreadnoughts, baneblades, everything. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And the problem, however, with this weapon is it has 9 shots. Yep. 9 shots. That's all you get. It works kind of like having a ready rack, in that you can fire 3 rounds in very quick succession, like really quick succession, and then you have to reload. You can do this a whole 3 times, and then your main weapon is out of ammunition. Which is where actually the plasma sponsons fit very well with this vehicle, because it can allow you to still put plasma down range when your main weapon inevitably runs out of ammo. And, then there's the hull heavy bolter, which is, it's perfectly good weapon. Maybe I would have liked the flamer, but then again, you can, you will use the hull heavy bolter to pick off, single target, small group of guardsmen. Basically, you have to be really stingy with your ammunition, because even reloading from a Trojan does take a while. Alright, next up we have the Demolisher. Demolisher goes into the B tier, mostly because even though its giant shells are absolutely devastating, it does have an issue fighting other Leman Russ tanks. Now, it has a heat shell, in all fairness, which is perfectly adequate. Just Demolishers, Chimeras, and anything below it in terms of protection. But yeah, the rounds have an immense amount of drop, and with the Tiow vehicles not having the most pinpoint scope, or zeroing, or whatever you want to call it, hitting things at range with this is quite a task. Now, the reason why this thing is so low down is because, it has very little capability to deal with tanks like other Leman Russes. This thing has major problems, even if the heat shell could pen them frontally, which it cannot do. The fact that you have a almost as short as a Punisher's effective range is really the biggest detriment of this vehicle. But in its anti-infantry, ability, it is helped by its dual heavy flamer sponsons, which is it's absolutely devastating at a close range. Anything trying to close in with this tank, or if you're worried about splash damage, that is also an option. Hull is heavy bolter, as I've previously mentioned, is perfectly fine weapon, perfectly capable of dealing with, Space Marines and light vehicles and all those things. I would have very much liked if this vehicle had a las cannon in its hull. This thing would have easily been upper tier, because you really need that, especially long range, that reliable anti-tank firepower. And the reload for the cannon, the ammunition load is okay, but the reload between the ammunition types for the cannon is painfully slow. Engaging armor with this thing is not really something it can do. Alright, then we come to Conqueror. This is the next doozy. This one gave me a headache, because its main armament is essentially just a battle cannon, which fires faster, has less ammunition, but then its sponsons carry some of the most terrifying anti-armor ordnance that any Leman Russ carries, namely multi-melters. These are unique. On the entire list, nothing else has these. These are, in my opinion, probably on the same level of armor killing capability as the plasma cannon and the executioner. They have, in all fairness, they have very limited ammunition of 10 shots. It does say that you have a 2-shot capacity, but it fires those at the same time, no matter how lightly you click. They require manual reloading, which might throw some people off, and they have a range of about 200 meters. Yep. this is a melter weapon, a multi-melter, a very powerful melter weapon that has a 200-meter range. This is pretty insane, especially when you consider what's mostly being carried around, namely the handheld melter guns have very, very short range. This might, if you're fighting against not AI, this might just be able to catch somebody off guard if they're trying to get in close to you. Now, these multi-melters, as I've already alluded to, are very fucking terrifying. Like, this, just anything up to the Baneblade, it's just one shot. Leman Russ, one shot from front, gone. Macarius, if you hit the upper part of the front, gone. One shot, disabled. A heavy flame in the hull, which, not my favorite weapon, but I feel like this gives this thing, for its intended capability, which I'm going to assume is a close range brawling with other tanks, it rounds off this loadout very well. Moving on, and now we have the normal regular Battlecannon Leman Russ, the one armed with the normal Battlecannon. This is essentially the stock Leman Russ. This is, you think of a Leman Russ, you're probably thinking about a normal one for the Battlecannon. And this one comes in at A tier, just behind the Exterminator, because, as with the Exterminator, this thing actually struggles to kill another Leman from the front, which is, to me at least, a very important qualifier for the higher tiers. Yes, this other Tiow Lemans, this thing will not be able to effectively kill from the front. But it does have very good secondary armament, namely 2 heavy bolters and a hull las cannon, so, it makes it so, yes, you can engage Lemans from the front, absolutely. It also makes a great multi-purpose weapon, but having to have your hull gunner target it, it's not really, doesn't really do it for me. Right. Moving on to its more specialized cousin, the Annihilator. This thing has all the Leman Russ killing capability. Instead of the battle cannon, it packs twin las cannons as its main armament. Same las cannons you get in the hull, essentially, which, yes, you also get a hull las cannon in this one, more on that later, but you get 2 las cannons in the turret, which do actually fire separately. They're essentially classed as 2 different weapons, so you have to switch between them, but, that is actually a great benefit, because when one fires, the other one can reload, which means you have a las cannon which fires twice as fast, and, you have 2 times the essentially infinite ammo. Yeah, this one is, this is the cap of A tier, this vehicle. This goes at the top of A tier. And the only reason why this isn't making S tier, even though, as I've alluded to previously, I have a bias for tank killing capability, it's actually the exact same reason why the Punisher is so low down. This thing is so specialized at killing armor that you have a real problem engaging groups of infantry. Battlecannon has high explosive shells. This thing, especially since the las cannons lack any sort of splash, it loses out against infantry hard. I also have a bone to pick with this tank's hull weapon. I feel like the las cannon in this context is actually overkill. Quite a lot, in fact. Yeah, the heavy bolter sponsons are perfectly fine. In fact, I love those. Only thing I would have liked more is the plasma cannon, but that's just personal. But yes, the heavy bolters represent essentially the only real defense you have against infantry, especially swarms. Think orcs, for example, or just hordes of cultists. Yeah, Now, we have reached the end of the Tiow Lemans, but as the keen-eyed among you have already noticed, we have 2 more tanks actually to assign. And these may not... They don't look like Leman Russes, but they are. They are from the Imperial Conquest mod, henceforth referred to as ICP, and they are perfectly capable combat vehicles, which we will get into now. To start off, we have this mod's interpretation of a standard Battlecannon Leman, and things already start to get weird because it says Battlecannon on it. It looks the part. The Battlecannon does. But this is a Battlecannon without armor-piercing rounds. It doesn't even have the heat shell from the Tiow one. This only fires high explosive. But this high explosive is more powerful than the Demolisher's high explosive. I wouldn't say it's on plasma level. Actually, just from splash alone, I would say this comes close to the plasma cannon. But this also means that you have 32 high explosive rounds, and that's it. Its reload is somewhat slower. Now, this high explosive is actually so powerful that it It has absolutely no problem killing chimeras. Leman Russ's, yeah, this is where this vehicle's trouble really starts. So, the ICP shell, the ICP gun, which fires the shell, as the other ICP vehicles as well, this has very, very good range finding. Very good range firing, very good auto-zeroing, however you want to call it. So this thing is very, very good at being extremely accurate. Even at range, this shell has excellent ballistics. For a high explosive shell, not even the Battlecannon really has that good at ballistics. It's certainly infinitely better than the Demolisher's high explosive shell. And the biggest failure of this vehicle, high explosive only, is it's meh. But the reason why this is placed after the Demolisher, not in front of it, is its secondary armament. Now, this is where the ICP vehicles, in my opinion, have a fatal flaw. Namely, all they have, there are no other options, are 3 heavy bolters. 2 in the sponsons, 1 in the hull. Now, from my personal experience and also some testing, these are weaker than the Tiow heavy bolters. They also have less ammunition, but most damning of all, when these heavy bolters fire, the entire tank shakes. The sight on the main gun shakes. Yes, the heavy Leman Russ tank is being shook by the heavy bolters. So aiming at long range is very difficult, extremely off-putting. But something which is, again, all ICP vehicles share, which is, I love this feature. This is absolute favorite feature. Namely, it has a coaxial heavy stubber alongside the main cannon, which gives the gunner an ability to engage infantry with something else than a tank shell. It has a 1,000-round belt, kills normal infantry perfectly fine. Of course, struggles against space mariners, but that's to be expected. And no Tiow tank has this. Modern tanks have it. ICP vehicles have it. It's just Tiow which completely forgoes this. And yeah, these are the reasons. Basically, no very little anti-armor capabilities, very mediocre secondaries. This is why this tank is at the bottom of B. Now, for this time, our last tank, the ICP Vanquisher. Yes, this is another strange one, because despite being a Vanquisher name and having a very interesting looking gun, let's just rip the band-aid off. It looks nothing like a Vanquisher gun. It looks like something from a modern tank. But, its looks, we're looking at the capabilities here. This gun has problems killing Lemans. Like, defeating Leman Russ tanks, specifically TIOW ones, ICP ones, are more durable overall, but they have weaker front armor. But TIOW Lemans, this thing has big problems killing those from the front, even from relatively close range. The ballistics on it are, as for an ICP vehicle to be expected, are excellent. Ranging, zeroing, absolutely no complaint, wonderful. Wonderful to use. It has the same excellent coaxial heavy stubber as the previous tank, so really wonderful. Again, its secondaries really, really hurt this tank, because unlike, say, a regular Battlecannon Leman Russ from the TOW mod, this doesn't really have the hard counter to Leman Russes, from the front at least, that the las cannon presents, for example. It also has only AP shells, normal, I think it's actually APD SFS in this case, and high explosive shells, which are fine. There's not that many of them, but they're fine. This forgoes the heat shell of the Battlecannon Leman Russ, but, well, you didn't hear me mention them earlier when we were talking about that tank, so I don't really put much importance on those. They're fine, they're okay to have as a backup, but they're not really that important. So, all of this said, I believe this goes at the end of A tier, which it's a perfectly fine multi-purpose tank, which is durable. It's very durable. It's surprisingly durable. It's more durable than a TOW Leman, in my opinion. But its lack of decent secondary options, it just holds it back. Just holds it back. It hurts it so bad. But it is really, otherwise it is a joy to use. Alright, that said and done, we have reached the end of this video, guys. Links to the mods are, of course, in the description below. And I would like to thank the 5th Steel Legion for letting me try out some of the stupider lines of Leman Russ and their ops. Yes, even the Executioner. That really helped me get just the experience in an actual op for this video. Testing things in virtual reality is, it's fine. But really, some hands-on experience really helped with this. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and I would very much like some feedback down below. This is my first voiceover video. I'm gonna see how this does. So yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I am out.